We do the same camping trip every year, the four of us. Me, my brother Ethan, and two friends, Kyle and Den. Same weekend at the end of September, same location. A remote campsite in the Allegheny Mountains, western Pennsylvania. One gravel road in, and the last hour has no cell service. We've been going there for 8 years, and in that time we've learned that place like our own backyard. The campground is official, but nearly abandoned. The Forest Service maintains about a dozen cleared sites along a creek, each with a fire ring and a rusted numbered post. In 8 years, we've never seen more than 2 other groups there. Most of the time, nobody at all. You pull in, pick the same site number 7 by the big pine, and for 3 days, the world shrinks down to the fire, the river, and the sky. I'm giving you all of this detail because I want you to understand one thing. We knew that place. We weren't tourists who wandered in and scared themselves. We knew how many sites were there, how the gravel road sounded at night, how long it took to walk from our fire to the creek and back. We knew that almost nobody came out there that time of year. That's exactly why what happened has no explanation I can allow myself. Over 8 years, we developed a ritual, almost a superstition. We always set up at Site 7. We never took any of the others, even if 7 was somehow occupied. We just waited out. I don't know where it started. It just became understood that the other sites weren't ours, especially 9. Site 9 sat a little apart, set deeper into the shadow of the trees, and without ever discussing it, all 4 of us had walked around it for 8 years. Nobody ever said why. Nobody ever set up there. That year we arrived Friday evening, same as always. Pitched 2 tents, got the fire going, stayed up late. Nothing unusual. The campground was empty. No other cars anywhere on the road. The strange part started the next morning. I woke up first. I always wake up first. I crawled out of the tent before full light and walked down to the creek to wash up. And on the way, I saw something that hadn't been there the night before. A 3rd tent. It was set up on Site 9, one site over from us, maybe 40 meters away. Old canvas, dark green, the kind they stopped making 30 years ago. It didn't look like a modern camping tent. It was taller, with straight walls, like a small field tent out of an old photograph. I stood and looked at it for about 2 minutes. We would have heard a car. That gravel road is audible from a kilometer away, and at night, too. Nobody could have driven in and set up camp without the 4 of us sitting around the fire hearing it. I woke Ethan up. We walked over together, cautiously, the way you approach something that belongs to someone else. We called out. No answer. The entrance flap was closed, tied shut from the inside with old cord. No sign of anything around the tent. No fire, no gear, no flattened grass. The dew lay in an even layer right up to the walls, undisturbed. Nobody had walked back and forth. The tent had just appeared overnight. Den said the obvious. Someone hiked in, pitched it, and was sleeping. Made sense. We decided not to bother them. Went back, made coffee, and the day moved on. We hiked up to the waterfall higher on the creek, came back, cooked. Every now and then I'd glance at that green tent. The flap never moved. Nobody came out. That day we tried to live normally. We jumped off the lower ledge into the cold water, ate lunch by the fire. But something had changed in the air of the campground. The forest we'd known for 8 years sounded different. The birds that always made noise in the mornings over the creek were silent that morning. I noticed it on the way back from the waterfall. No sound at all except the water and our own footsteps. Den noticed too. I could tell from his face, but nobody said it out loud. Then I noticed the second thing. Someone had scratched something into the wooden post at Site 9. Fresh, the pale wood under the flaking paint hadn't darkened yet. 3 words, block letters, "Don't count us." I showed the guys. Kyle said it was just some stupid prank, kids from a nearby town. But Ethan went quiet. I knew why, that afternoon at the top of the waterfall, when Den was counting out loud so everyone would fit in the frame. He'd counted 5. We'd laughed at the time. Den always loses count. Nobody thought anything of it. We decided not to all sleep at once. Split the night into 4 watches, 1 person at the fire, the rest in the tents. Nobody called it what it was. We just said it was to keep the fire going. But everyone knew the real reason. Nobody wanted that green tent standing unobserved for even a minute. Kyle took the first watch, then Den, then Ethan. Each one handing off said the same thing, almost in a whisper. Quiet. Nothing happening. The green tent didn't move. The flaps stayed tied. The forest stayed silent, like someone had switched it off. The night was hard. We kept the fire up in turns, and somewhere around 3 in the morning, during my watch, the flap of the green tent moved. Not from wind. There was no wind at all. The flap opened from the inside, slowly, evenly, like someone untying the cords one by one. Then it stopped, halfway open. Inside was a darkness deeper than the night around it. I shone my flashlight straight in and saw nothing. Not the walls, not the floor, just darkness that seemed to swallow the beam. I didn't go over there. I woke Ethan, and we sat together until sunrise, side by side, not taking our eyes off that opening. The flap stayed open. Nothing came out. At dawn, the tent was closed again, tied shut from the inside, like nothing had happened. We packed up that same morning, a full day ahead of schedule. We broke camp quietly, everyone avoiding looking toward Site 9. When the car was loaded, I did something I shouldn't have. I walked over one last time and looked at the post. There were more words now. Under "Don't count us," someone had added, in the same block letters, fresh scratches. "You did." I got in the driver's seat and didn't say anything. We took the same gravel road out, and for the whole hour to the highway, I checked the rearview mirror more than I watched the road. I don't know what I was afraid of seeing. On the way back, we stopped at the first gas station where we got a signal. I don't know why, maybe just to hear the sounds of civilization again. While the guys went in for coffee, I searched the campground. Standard Forest Service page, hours, site map. 10 numbered sites along the creek. Site 9 wasn't on the list. The sites went from 1 through 8, then jumped straight to 10. 9 didn't exist. I read through it 3 times. In 8 years, I'd never looked closely at that map because why would I? We always went to 7. I showed the screen to Ethan. He looked at it for a long time, then handed the phone back and said only, "Let's go." We never went back to that campground. An 8-year tradition ended that September, and none of us have ever suggested returning. We barely talk about it at all. But last month, Den dropped an old photo into our group chat. The one from the waterfall, the last one from before everything started. Just sharing an old memory. The 4 of us standing on the rock above the water, smiling, sun in the lens. I zoomed in, looked at it for a long time. Behind us, in the shadow of the trees on the far bank, a place none of us had gone to that day. There's a 5th figure. Indistinct, dark, adult height. Not looking at the camera, looking at us. And I still can't decide what's worse. That it's there. Or that in the photo Den took 1 second earlier, it isn't. I checked. Same frame, same us, same far bank. Empty. Like it appeared exactly at the moment we were counted. I've been doing solo hiking trips for about 10 years now. People always seem to think that's scary or lonely, but for me, it's the opposite. It's the only truly quiet stretch of the whole year. I take my vacation time, load my gear into the truck, and disappear for a week somewhere in the Oregon wilderness, somewhere with no cell service, no people, nothing but trees and my own thoughts. That year, I went somewhere I'd never been before. A remote corner of a national forest east of the Cascades, designated wilderness, no developed campgrounds. You register at the trailhead, pick up your permit, and then go wherever you want. Camp wherever you like, as long as you follow the rules. No closer than 100 meters to water, fires only in approved areas. I love places like that. No neighbors, no numbered sites, just you and a map. The first 3 days were perfect. I covered about 20 miles into the backcountry, set up a base camp on a small plateau above a valley with a view of miles of forest and not a single human footprint. In the evenings, I'd sit by the fire and watch the mountains change color as the sun went down, thinking this is what I work the rest of the year for. I'm giving you all of this detail because I want you to understand. I'm experienced. This wasn't my first trip or my 10th. I know wilderness rules. I know how rangers operate. I know what a forest sounds like at night and what doesn't belong in it. I'm not the kind of person who spooks at a branch snapping behind the tent. 10 years of solo trips has taught me to tell real danger from my own imagination, which is exactly why what happened on the 4th night still hasn't let me go. Because I know I didn't make any of it up. That evening, there was no warning. No strange sounds during the day, no feeling of being watched. None of the things people usually describe. Just an ordinary cold evening in the mountains. I'd eaten, added wood to the fire, and was getting ready to turn in. On the 4th night, a ranger came. I heard him before I saw him. Footsteps in the dark, beyond the edge of the firelight, steady and unhurried. I tensed up immediately. I hadn't seen another living soul in 3 days, and a person showing up at night, 20 miles from the nearest road, is not something you're ready for. Then he stepped out of the dark. Forest Service uniform, green pants, olive drab shirt with patches, the wide-brimmed hat they all wear. Flashlight on his belt, radio, a clipboard, every detail exactly right. He raised a hand in a calm greeting and asked permission to approach the fire. Polite, professional. I let out a breath and waved him over. He said he was doing a night patrol, checking permits for people camping in the wilderness area. He asked to see mine. I handed it over, and he looked it over carefully in his flashlight beam, nodded, handed it back. All by the book. We talked a little. He asked where I was from, how long I was planning to stay, whether I'd seen anyone else out there. Standard questions. I started to relax. Then I started noticing the small things. First, he wasn't sweating, wasn't even slightly out of breath. The only way to reach my camp is up a steep slope. I'd barely hauled myself up there with my pack. He looked like he'd just stepped out of an office. Steady breathing, dry shirt, clean boots. Not a speck of dust, even though the whole trail was volcanic grit that sticks to everything. Second, he had no pack, not even a small bag. A ranger doing a night patrol 20 miles from the road doesn't go without water and gear. He had nothing on him except what was on his belt. Third, and worst, when he talked, I never once saw his breath. The night was cold, maybe 40 degrees, and every word I said put a little cloud in the air. Nothing came out of his mouth. I started answering more carefully. He seemed to sense the change, and his questions changed too. He stopped asking about permits and weather. Now he was asking something else. Whether I was alone, whether anyone knew exactly where I was camped, when I was expected back, whether I had any signal. Same calm, even voice, same professional smile. But they weren't a ranger's questions anymore. They were the questions of someone who wanted to know how alone I really was. I don't know what made me lie. Rationally, there was no reason to. A ranger, polite and calm, sitting across from me at my fire. The logical thing was to answer honestly. But something inside me, that same part that after 10 years has learned to recognize real danger, was screaming at me not to tell this person I was alone. I listened to it without even understanding why. Later I understood that's exactly what saved me. I lied about everything. Said I wasn't out here solo, that my buddy had gone down to the creek for water and would be back any minute. That my wife had the exact coordinates and was expecting a call in the morning. That I had a satellite messenger that pinged my location every hour. I said it all calmly, matter-of-factly, like it was the most ordinary thing. None of it was true. I was alone, nobody knew my exact location, there was no signal, and nobody was expecting me for another 6 days. He went quiet. The smile didn't disappear, but something behind it shifted. Like someone realizing their plan hadn't worked and moving on to the next one. Then he slowly stood up, thanked me for my cooperation in that same polite tone, and said he'd continue his patrol. Reminded me to put the fire out before midnight, and walked back into the dark with that same steady step. I didn't sleep at all. I sat with my back against a large rock, facing the darkness, until sunrise, with my knife in my hand and my flashlight ready. I didn't hear footsteps again. The night was completely silent. At first light, I broke camp faster than I ever had in my life and started back toward the trailhead. I covered 20 miles in a single day, almost no stops. The ranger at the station was old, the kind who's worked the same post for decades. I told him about the night visitor, just to understand whether it was one of his people, or maybe some local pulling a prank. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said that there were no night patrols in this wilderness area. None at all. There were 2 of them covering the whole sector, and they were done by dark and never went into the backcountry alone at night. It was against every safety protocol. Nobody from the service had been out there that night, 20 miles from the road. I asked who it was then. He looked at me like he was weighing whether to say it. Then he got up, walked over to the bulletin board by the entrance, the one with the bear warnings and trail closures, and unpinned a laminated sheet and set it in front of me. It was a missing persons flyer. Old, faded. A man who had gone into that same wilderness area 7 years ago and never came back. No search had turned up anything. No body, no trace. In the photo, he was wearing a Forest Service uniform. He really was a ranger, the old man said quietly. Worked this district, went out on patrol and didn't come back. He picked up the flyer. Since then, every once in a while, someone comes back out and tells the same thing. A ranger who shows up at night, asks questions. He looked me in the eyes. You're the only one in recent memory who came back and told it yourself. You understand what that means? I understood. And I still can't stop thinking about it. The ones who came back and told it, those were the ones who lied to him. The ones who said they weren't alone. The ones who didn't give an honest answer when he asked how alone they were. I don't know what would have happened if I'd told the truth. That I was alone. That nobody knew where I was. that there was no signal and nobody expected me for another week. But I think about it every time I start packing for a trip. And since then, I don't go solo anymore. Not because I'm afraid of the forest. Because I learned never to say out loud to anyone, anywhere, that there's no one with you. Especially not to someone who asks too calmly. My wife Clara and I love camping for the exact reason most people don't: the solitude. Not developed sites with showers and neighbors through a thin wall, but actual wilderness, tens of miles with nobody around. We've been doing it for about 6 years, and in that time we've covered half the forests of North Carolina. We find the most remote corner of the map we can reach by some kind of dirt track, and we disappear there for a few days. This particular trip took us to an area we'd read about on a hiking forum, a far section of a national forest in the Appalachians where almost nobody goes. We turned off the pavement, then off the gravel onto a dirt track. And the last hour was rough enough that I was genuinely worried about the suspension. But it was worth it. We came out onto a small meadow on a hillside, surrounded by old-growth forest, with a creek below and a view of ridge after ridge rolling away in blue waves to the horizon. Not a soul anywhere. Perfect. I'm telling you all this because I want you to understand one thing. Clara and I are not people who panic. 6 years of backcountry camping teaches you a certain calm. You stop being afraid of the dark, of sounds, of the emptiness. You start to love those things. We'd camped in places most people wouldn't go for any amount of money, and in 6 years, we had never once been genuinely scared. We knew the wilderness. We trusted it. Which is why what happened over those 2 nights is not something I can chalk up to imagination or beginner's nerves or the tricks a tired mind plays. There were 2 of us. We both saw it, and neither of us has slept properly since. We pitched the tent, got the fire going, and spent the first evening the way we like to. Just the 2 of us, in the quiet, watching the light go out over the mountains. The night was moonless, and the darkness around us went absolute. Beyond the ring of our fire, nothing was visible. No trees, no sky, no edge of the meadow. Just a black wall that started right where the light stopped. It was just as we were getting ready to turn in that Clara said, "Look, there's someone out there." I turned toward where she was pointing. Far below us, on the opposite hillside across the creek, a fire was burning in the darkness. Another campfire. My first reaction was actually relief, not in any bad way, just the small comfort of knowing you're not the only person for miles. We waved, though at that distance there was no chance they'd see us. The fire burned steadily, calmly. We lay down and thought nothing more of it. The strange part started the following night. During the day we'd hiked the valley, gone down to the creek, climbed up to the adjacent ridge, and I noticed that on the opposite hillside, where the fire had been burning the night before, there was no sign of a camp. No fire ring, no flattened grass, no tent. The slope was steep and rocky, thick with undergrowth. There was nowhere to set up a tent even if you'd wanted to. I told myself I'd misjudged the distance in the dark, that the fire had been farther away or closer than it seemed. But that night, it appeared again. Same spot. And this time, I watched more carefully. Our fire and the other one were burning in the same way. When I added wood and our fire flared up brighter, the other one, a few seconds later, flared up too. When ours died down, so did that one. I decided it was coincidence, the eye playing tricks when it's tired. So I ran an experiment. I picked up a large dry branch and threw it on the fire. Our flames shot up in a tall column of sparks. 3 seconds later, the fire on the opposite hillside shot up the exact same way. The same column, the same height. Clara saw it too. We sat in silence and watched two fires on two hillsides burning in perfect sync, as if one was the reflection of the other in some invisible mirror stretched across the valley. I tried again to be sure. I raked back the coals and reduced our fire almost to embers. The other one went down to embers too. I blew ours back up. The other one came back up. The delay was always the same, about 3 seconds, like the timing of an echo, except it wasn't sound, it was fire. We kept testing it, and every time the result was identical. I waved a burning branch back and forth. 3 seconds later, across the creek, the same point of light traced the same arc. Clara threw a handful of dry leaves onto ours, and it flared briefly. And across the water, it flared too. There was a precision to it that went beyond approximate similarity. It wasn't a rough match. It was a mirror, a perfect one, with a 3-second delay. And the longer we kept going, the less it felt like a game. Because at some point, I caught myself thinking something that made my blood run cold. How did I know who was copying whom? I'd been assuming we were the source, and that fire was the echo. But from the other hillside, everything would look exactly the same in reverse. Two identical things doing the same thing 3 seconds apart, and neither can prove it's the original. We put our fire out completely, doused it with water, covered it with dirt, stomped it down. The darkness came back absolute. The fire on the opposite hillside did not go out. It kept burning, steadily, calmly, on its own, in complete darkness, on a slope that in the daytime had shown no fire ring, no trace, no place for a camp. Now that there was nothing left to mirror, it simply burned. And I will swear to this, it burned a little brighter. Like it no longer had to pretend to be a reflection. We got into the tent and didn't sleep. Clara held my hand so hard she left marks. Through the tent fabric, through my closed eyes, I could still feel the glow of that fire on the hillside. It didn't go out. And at some point, maybe 3 in the morning, maybe 4, I heard a sound. Footsteps, down by the creek. Someone crossing the water, slowly, with a soft splash. From our side to theirs, or from theirs to ours, I couldn't tell. Then the footsteps came up the slope, our slope, toward the tent. I didn't breathe, neither did Clara. The steps came close, maybe 10 meters, no more, and stopped. A silence fell that rang in my ears. And then, right next to us, on the side of the tent where there was nothing but darkness, I heard someone sit down, lower themselves to the ground, and let out a long, quiet, satisfied exhale. The kind a person makes when they finally sit down by a warm fire after a long walk. Except our fire was gone. We'd put it out. We lay there without moving until first light. When the sky went gray, I finally made myself unzip the tent. Nobody. Dew, mist over the creek, an empty meadow. But there where our campfire had been, the one we'd doused with water, covered with dirt, and stomped out flat, a fire was burning. Small, fresh, just built, from our own wood. A neat ring, carefully laid branches. A warm, living flame. As if someone had come in the night and lit it again. In our spot. While we were gone from the world, just on the other side of a thin sheet of nylon. We packed in 10 minutes. Threw things into the car however they'd go, nothing folded. I tried 3 times to put that fire out. And 3 times it came back. Like it didn't want to die. We finally just drove away and left it burning. Clara was quiet the whole way down the forest track. Out on the pavement, when the signal came back, she said quietly what I'd been thinking myself, but hadn't been willing to say out loud. That when we put our fire out that night, the other one didn't go out with it. Which meant the reflection, all along, wasn't that one. It was us. We don't go into deep wilderness together anymore. And I still can't look at a distant fire in the dark, on the highway, out a train window, anywhere, without thinking, what if it's been copying me all along? And what happens on the day I go out and it doesn't?